or spend time with them, we don't know where they've been and how long they've been here. So I just want to do a little introduction on Michael Brundy. He began his journey in religious science nearly 20 years ago. He began by attending the Church of Religious Science in St. Louis, Missouri in 1993. When he moved to Dallas in 1999, he found our community and has attended services here consistently for more than 12 years. 5 years ago, he became a member, so he can make a bigger contribution. He's on the welcome team, a platform assistant, and he's most proud of being one of the many members who actually helped build our house of worship. Michael is a motivational speaker, an author, and a marathon runner. He has authored 3 books, which you can all find in our bookstore, and here's one of his fabulous books. He's been a manager in the telecommunications industry for over 30 years and brags that he's never missed a day of work. He's an active member of the fraternity alumni chapter Kappa Alpha Psi and president of their foundation. Today, Michael will be speaking to us about the importance of community service. He believes that we're all in this world together, and we should serve each other, and it takes a village. And here's what I know about Michael. He's got a smile that dazzles you from a mile away. You feel his presence when he's in the other room. When he's not here, you miss him. And he greets you with such authenticity with a heart wide open. And I am grateful for his presence in this community, and I'm grateful for the wisdom he's about to share. Let's give a hand to Michael Brundy.
Tell you guys right off the bat, okay? If something happens with the microphone, don't blame Susan, blame me, because I'm not used to having a microphone on when I have to go out and hug people. So when I go out and hug all you guys, the microphone keeps getting jerked around. So it's your fault, not yours. If you were listening close to the introduction, one of the things that you heard was one thing that I'm most proud of is having been one of the members who helped actually build this. There's a reason for that. I come from an old town, Leavenworth, Kansas. Leavenworth, Kansas, and it's that part of Kansas where you see the little curve when you look at it on the map. Well, that's home for me. And Leavenworth goes back to the 1850s, 1860s. It's an old place. And because God blessed me with 2 mothers, they made sure I kept my butt in the Black Baptist church and the Black AME church every Sunday. I was always there, okay? So I'm used to call and response, so if you guys want to talk back and forth to me while you talk, that's fine with me. I have no problem with that. But one of the things that happened at the older church when I was young, we had a guy there, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson used to always talk about how his family had been there since the beginning of time, the beginning of Leavenworth, and he had actually helped build the church. So for me, that meant, hey, when I get a chance, I'm going to help build a church and leave that kind of legacy. Well, it reminded me of something also. Now, this is going to test you guys, or test my age, I guess. How many of you remember the movie Lily of the Fields? Lily of the Fields was a movie with Sidney Poitier. And if you remember, Sidney Poitier had a lot of trouble with learning how to serve those nuns. He was up there building the church. That's another inspiration for me about service and about giving and how difficult sometimes it can be, but how important it also is. Martin Luther King says that everyone has the power for greatness. Everyone. Not fame, but greatness. Because greatness is determined by service. And anyone, and everyone can serve. Mary Wright Elderman, who's president of the Children's Defense Fund, she says it like this. She says, service is the rent that we pay for being. It's the very purpose of life. It's not just something that we do in our spare time. And one of my best ones is what Dorothy Height says. And Dorothy Height says that without community service, our communities would not be have near as much strong quality. She says it's as good for the person who provides the service as the recipient is. She says that service is the way that we ourselves grow and develop. So my question to you is, how many of you are ready to grow and develop? Oh, now, come on. You're all ready to grow and develop, right? Yeah. Because that's what service is about. And what I want to talk to you today about 3 things. I want to talk to you about the importance of service, why it's important, okay? Why it's important also to the community. And most importantly, why it's important to you. When we serve, we give of ourselves, we give of our abilities, our talents, our skills. The definition of service is simply an activity that provides assistance to other people. It's a way of helping others. And I think that when we help others, that helps the whole community. That's like the fabric of us. Okay? So if you're here at this particular center, there are a number of ways that you can serve. There are a number of different things that you can do. For me, I was lucky. I've been hanging out here for a long time, and I wasn't even a member, but that was one of the great things about being here. I could be here every Sunday, and I didn't have to actually be a member. But all of a sudden, I started noticing that, Reverend Lee left, and Robert left, and Michael Gott left, and practitioners were going to work with them, and people were leaving. And I decided, wait a minute, I get so much from this place that I need to make a bigger contribution. And one of the practitioners, Clyde, he encouraged me to do just that and told me that if I wanted to do that, I would have to become a member. Hence, I became a member, and I've got a chance now to serve as a platform assistant, as well as the welcome committee, which has to be one of the best committees around, because you get a chance to hug all the new people and explain to them how this is just like home. See, everyone around here has something that they can give. I don't care what it is. Everyone has some sort of skills. Maybe you have administrative skills. You're good at filing papers or typing. Dottie can surely use your help. Maybe you're an artist. Maybe you have skills where you can draw or paint, or you do jewelry like my friend there, or maybe you're even a poet like my friend Rashawn. Maybe there's some way that you can take those talents and give back to this community. One of my favorite volunteers around here, you guys know her. She's the shortest person in the church. Ruth Beecher, I just love her. It doesn't matter when I come to the center. If I'm coming here during the week for classes, if I'm here for the men's group, if I'm here on Sunday, she is always here doing something, cleaning one thing or another. Joe Tinker's another guy. I see Joe here all the time. Even when I came to walk the labyrinth, Joe was sitting over there holding conference and meditating. There's some people that continuously always seem to give back to this community. And I want to encourage those of you who don't to even do so and do more. You'd be surprised at things that you can get into around here. I mean, you can be a greeter, and that's got to be a good job around here. You can be up in audio, video, and help out with that. There are tons of things. And we don't just ask you individually to give. We as a community give. We as a community provide service. And I want to make sure that I don't miss out on too much of the stuff that we do around here. So I'm going to even tell you, we're part of Campfire USA. And Campfire USA is an organization that's been around for years, and what they do is they have like after-school programs for children so that they can learn more about leadership, more about how they can give back to the world. We're part of, now this is a really good, it's the EQuest, okay? Equestrian Therapeutic Horsemanship. Now, I learned about that one when I was a platform assistant, because I had to ask, what the heck is all that? Now, would you believe that they have figured out that if you ride on horses, we can take disabled children and put them around horses, and it empowers them. It makes their muscle tones better, it puts them in better health, even their thinking becomes more clear. And that's something that we participate in. We even go clean the stables and clean the place, but that's something that we as an organization do. You all know what we do for Gooch Elementary, right? Because we hear about Gooch all the time. We collect Thanksgiving baskets, we have food, clothing drives, we go paint the school, we serve as a PTA. So if you don't have any children in school, but you want to be a member of a PTA or you want to give back to the community, that's something else that you can get a part of. You can be a part of what we do with Gooch Elementary School. Or how about this? Seasons for Nonviolence. You guys all know about that. That's where we actually throw peace out into the world. So for 64 days, we have peace pals who end up going to all the elementary schools and teaching children how to be more peaceful. And then from the time that Gandhi was assassinated until Martin Luther King's assassination, those 64 days, we all celebrate nonviolence and peace. That's something that this organization does. And here's an easy one for you. If you want to do something, how about the earth stewardship? Now that's giving back to the community, worrying about the environment. And if nothing else, you get a chance to go into all the bathrooms and put up all those nice little signs. You guys have seen those, haven't you? Hey, it's because of that group that we don't have plastic water bottles around here and that we're doing our bit for the community. We live in that kind of place. And then one of my favorite ones happens to be a group that my mom even participates with, and she's not even here, and it's Stitches. Stitches is the group that does all the knitting and all the sewing, and they knit little beanies for little premature kids and make scarves and blankets and those types of things. So there's something here for everyone. And the good thing is that we don't just ask you to do it, we do it also. That's what community service is. That's what service is. Now, why is it good for the community? I think it's good for the community because when we all give back to each other, we make a bond. It becomes a safe place for all of us just to live, just to exist. Now tell me this. Doesn't it feel better when you're providing service to other people? I mean, when you're doing something to help somebody else, even if they don't even know it, don't you feel good about it? If you just go pick up a piece of trash off the ground, don't you feel good about making that contribution? There's something that happens when we all give back to each other. I can't always explain it, but I know that that is true, that it makes the community better. There's a story that we've all had to hear. I know I sure heard it in all the churches that I've been. You've heard the story about the Good Samaritan? Now, the Good Samaritan is a perfect example of providing service. This guy was going down the road to Jericho, you've heard it, and he got beat up, got robbed, and they left him there naked and bruised and took all his stuff. And then becomes a good part of the story because the priest comes by, the Levite comes by, and the Samaritan comes by. And the thing is, the questions that they ask. Now, the priest and the Levites, they asked this question. They said, well, what will happen to me if I stop to help this guy? Will I be robbed? Will I become a victim? Oh, he's kind of dirty. Will I catch some kind of disease? But what will happen to me? That's how they were thinking. But the Good Samaritan, even though Samaritans and Jewish people did not get along, even though they were enemies, he thought, what would happen to the man if I don't help him? That's an entirely different question. That's an entirely different way for us to be in the world. And he picked up the man, he fixed up his wounds, he put him on his donkey, took him over to the nearest inn, left his checkbook, his ATM card, and said, hey, anything that the guy needs, give it to him. That's the way you provide service, I think, when we give back to each other. I've seen it work, and I've seen it work even in my own life. When people give, something good happens to them. It's just about to be my birthday time. And every November, well, not every November, but a whole lot of Novembers, I have a fabulous party. And if you ever get lucky enough to get invited to one of my birthdays, it's invitation only, so if you ever get invited, you want to make sure you show up. Well, a few years back when I was still living in St. Louis, we were having the birthday party, and we always come up with a theme for the party. And this particular year, the theme was service. Okay? Now, you tell me if this isn't like your house. Whenever people come to my house, all they want to do is gather in the kitchen. They don't want to be in the living room. They don't want to be in the family room. They all want to be right there in the kitchen. Is that true for you too? People just gather in the kitchen. So at the party, we said, we're going to find a way to get them out of the kitchen. So we eat very healthy, okay? And we had many courses of meals for the party. And the first course was vegetable soup and chili made out of turkey. Okay? Now, we're not real extravagant, so we were just serving it in styrofoam cups with a little plastic spoon, but you got the picture, right? So I announced, anybody who's in the kitchen, you got to get out. You got to get out because we're about to eat. And if you stay here, then you have to help. You have to serve. And surprisingly, people still stayed in the kitchen. But can you imagine a two-story house with people everywhere, all over the house, and we fill these little cups up and put them on trays, and we send people out to go serve other folks. Now, my thinking is that, hey, my guests are going to get served, and that just enhances the party. Because, it's nice when you have the waiters come by at the party and give you stuff. But what we found out is that the real thing was the people doing the serving. They got so excited. They would rush back into the kitchen and they were fighting each other to be the next one to do the serving. Something powerful happens when we provide service. I don't always understand it, but I know that it's true, that something really powerful happens. I was doing some research to try to find out more about this thing called service and what do different religions think about service. Okay? And so I'm looking on the internet and I see this thing that talks about, well, let me date myself, okay? How many of you know who I'm talking about when I say Sister Patricia? The Flying Nun. Some of y'all know about that. Remember the Flying Nun? Okay, how many of you remember The Sound of Music? Okay, how many remember the TV show Kung Fu? Yeah. Okay? Now, in all of those cases, what you'll see is that There's a little novice nun who has to, work her way at the nunnery, whatever they call the nun place, okay? And she has to do all that cleaning, okay? And then you see them cleaning the floor, and you see the brothers waiting on the older brothers, that kind of stuff. You see them doing all that. Well, I always thought that was, a sense of servitude. They're serving the masters, the big guys. And when I was speaking, I said, no, it's not that at all. It's not really that the old priest or the old brother or the old mother nun or whatever are being served. What they're doing is providing an opportunity, a learning opportunity for those young folks who are coming into their ministry. The idea is that, when you're down there scrubbing that floor, you don't want to do that stuff, all kinds of things come up. And it helps you work on those reasons, and that's your selfishness. So every time you're doing it, now you get rid of another selfishness. And pretty soon, you find yourself working selfishly, okay? And they say that when you get rid of that selfishness and you give just because, then you're doing like nature. You know how nature, flowers just give fragrance just because. Doesn't matter who you are, but just because. Clouds give rain to everybody, the good, the bad, just because. And that's what they're learning, is that when you just give just because, then they say that moves you into a place called grace. And then that moves you to a place, they say, that's heaven on earth. Now for me, that gets a little bit too complicated, because I'm not that heavy with some of this religious stuff. But what I do know is that if it feels good, then you do it. And when you do good, it feels good. It just feels good. Do you agree? I don't know why, but it does. Now, if you don't know that that's true, I suggest you need to go do some more stuff, because you're not doing enough good in your life. But if you're doing some good stuff, you have to admit that it feels good when you do good. The reason for that is, I think, is because it's good for us to serve. It gets all that toxic stuff out of us when we serve. One thing I don't want you to do is I don't want you to be a hoarder, okay? I don't want you to hoard your gifts, your talents, your skills. We have some hoarders in my family, and they collect everything, and it's a mess. And it's the same thing in your personal life. If you hoard your skills, your abilities, the gifts that you have, that stuff will be toxic. And it will eat you alive. And just like a muscle, you become atrophy and you won't be able to do anything. So I encourage you to be of service. I encourage you to give. It's just like, in the Bible when they talk about the Sea of Galilee and the Dead Sea. Now I know you guys have heard about this one, right? They all are fed by the Jordan River. The Jordan River, its source is way up high in the mountains, up in the Huron Mountains in Israel, okay? And it comes rolling down, and it goes in through the Sea of Galilee. Okay? Now the Sea of Galilee, it has another outlet, so it not only takes that water in, but it pushes it further on down the river, and now it goes down to the Dead Sea. Now the Dead Sea just happens to be the lowest point on Earth, 2,000 feet below sea level. Just happens to be that. But it also happens to be a toxic place, because even though it has other smaller rivers that feed into it, it doesn't give to anything. The Dead Sea is dead because it doesn't give to anything. And because it doesn't give, because it has no outlet for that water to go, then what happens is as the water evaporates, all the chemicals and all the salts and stuff, they drip to the bottom, okay? And eventually, over time, that lake, that sea, is 30% saltier than the oceans, just because you don't have the inflow and the outflow. It's the same thing that's true with us. If you don't let that come out of you, let your gifts and treasures come out, it's going to clog you up, and you're going to be toxic. And just like that, in the Dead Sea, nothing grows, nothing lives. And they say you can just jump right in and just, it's so buoyant because you won't sink, because there's so much garbage, so much stuff in the Dead Sea. So my thing to you is that you don't want to be like that Dead Sea. You want to find a way to give. You want to find a way to serve, because it's not only good for you, but it's also good for the community. Got it? So here's what I want to leave you with. It's important for you to serve. It's important for you to have community service, and you can do it right here. If you don't have your own personal way of getting involved, we have a platform right here. You just have to join up and hook up with us right here, and there is a way that you can give back to the community. We can find a way. You can do it right here and be a greeter. You can be on the welcome committee. You can work in the kitchen. There are tons of things that you can do right here. If you want to reach out further in the community, remember you can get on the Gooch PTAs. There's all kinds of ways that you can give. We give to the North Dallas Food, North Texas Food Bank, okay? But there's all sorts of ways that we can give. So there's ways for you to give. It's important for you to give because that's what threads the community together. And it's most important because that's what makes you a better person and keeps you from being toxic. Okay? Now, I want to share one last story with you, and then I'll be through. And I think this story probably kind of ties in with what happens here. Years and years ago, like you heard me say, about 20 years ago, I was first getting into religious science in St. Louis. Well, when I started into science and mind and going to the church in St. Louis, it started off because there was a bookstore there, and I was big into bookstores. And I went to the bookstore, and the atmosphere around the bookstore, around the church, was just so peaceful. It was just so special that I came back the next Sunday to see, well, what goes on with the church? Now just like here, you know, I sit in the back for a while and all that kind of stuff, but when I got there, something really turned me on. And I had a ball at that church. And that's part of why, you know, I'm so much into religious science and mind. Now, I was having a good time at that church, and it was really good. But I was the only black person in the whole church. Okay? And I didn't see anybody that looked like me. And that was okay, because these were some of the coolest white people that I never ran across. You know, so for at least 20 some odd years, my student advisor has been a white female. And back then it was a lady named Clancy Blakepoint. She was really cool. But I heard that there was another church, similar to our church, that was down in the city. That there was a black science of mind church. So I was looking for this place. You know, I looked for a couple of years and I couldn't find it. And they said, well, there's this lady who runs it there. It's down on Del Mar. It's right in the heart of the city. Well, one day, I found the ministry. I was at a Jack Canfield motivational seminar before Jack Canfield did the chicken of the soup thing. And this lady was there. Okay? You heard me, okay? But anyway, this lady was there, and she was, okay, so picture this. An old, black, African-American woman, okay? And she was dressed up in African garb, you know, from head to toe, and had one of those things wrapped around her head like Alexis wears, you know, that kind of stuff. Then she had little gray hair sticking out under, and she had some little gray whiskers. And she had a walking stick that she walked with, and it reminded me of Moses, okay? And I went up to her and I said, I've been trying to find you, and I want to come to your church. And she said, well, come on down. We get together at noon on Sunday, which was perfect for me, because that meant that I could go to the first service. And those of you who know me, or those of you who don't know me around here, it's because I go to the first service so I can get home to the basketball game. But I could go to the first service here and still make it down to her church. So I went to the first service, and I go rushing down to the city. And it must be 12 o'clock. I figure, okay, and I'm going to church. Now, it's in a community where there's cars parked and double parked all over, so you really can't tell who's parked there for church and who's parked there just because they live in the area or whatever. So I didn't know what I was getting into, but I walk into the church. And when I walk into the church, there's an organ player in the back of the church playing some organ music. But there's nobody at all in the church. Not at all. And so I'm thinking, well, maybe I'm late, I got my times wrong or whatever, and I gotta get out of here. You know, I'm good with church, but there's no need to be there if nobody else is there. So I try to go out the back door and sneak my way out. And as I go out, I have to pass the minister's study, her office. And there she is. She's got her head down in the book, and she's studying, writing, and getting prepared and everything. She sees me, oh, how you doing this morning? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm late, I have to come see you. Oh, no, you're not late. We're about to have church now. Just go on in there. You know, I didn't want to tell her nobody wasn't in there. And now I'm stuck. You know, I can't leave, and now I got to go to church, and nobody's there. You know, so I go into church, and I'm not good like y'all. I didn't sit on the front pew, but I sat in the second row. And I sat there and waited, and the guy who was playing the organ, he moved from the back, moved up front to play on the piano. And this lady walked in with her nephew, who was a little teenager, and he turned out to be the usher for the day. She went up to the pulpit, and this lady proceeded to have church. You hear me? Just me there, and she had church. She followed the agenda, and we got up at the right time, and we sat down at the right time. We sang the songs, we prayed. They passed around the collection plate for my little measly $5. And I swear, it must have been their Adventures in Spirit service, because she started to talk about how difficult it is to keep a church together. You know, about how the lights have to still be paid, and these bills and phone bills and all kinds of things, and how hard it is to hold on when nobody even shows up. But this lady's commitment to service was so strong that she was there and she was prepared even if nobody else showed up, and she had church. You hear me? I was so inspired. She had no idea that I worked for the phone company. Had no idea that I worked in the billing department of the phone company and had access to her records. And they say when one becomes committed, then providence moves. Things begin to happen that you couldn't even imagine. I looked in there and I found her phone bill, and it was about $400 some odd, and I paid the phone bill. Didn't ever tell her, never said a thing, never even went back to the church. But you can bet that that lady understands that when you make a commitment to serve, things begin to happen. Things begin to work out. And that's exactly what happened to her. So what I'm here to tell you is that, yeah, it does take a little bit for churches to survive. So you do need to make sure you listen to what Alpha and Renee were saying, and make sure you give. But don't just give of your money. Give of your talents. Give of your skills. Give of your gifts. That's how you serve. That's how you serve others. It's good for the community, it's good for us, and it's good for you. Make sense? Yes. Now, my last quote. You guys heard from Albert Schweitzer. He says this. He says, I don't know what your destiny will be, but one thing I know is that the only ones of you who will really ever be happy are those who have sought and found a way to serve. So if you want to be truly happy, find a way to serve. Because it's just like Martin Luther King says, everyone has power for greatness. Not fame, but greatness. Because greatness is determined by service. And anyone